decision on the bat symbol for the PTI come in yesterday. Of course, there is a very real political angle to it. Of course, there's a lot that is being said about what this will mean for the upcoming elections, what this will mean particularly for the party itself. But along with that, of course, is a very real issue was a very real issue before the court when we look at the legal side of things. We'll also be talking about what this means with the kind of facts that were given out and the decision that was taken by the Superior Court, the ramifications overall of the decision yesterday. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Barrister Ummar Gillani, who's a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Ummar Ziauddin, who's also a barrister legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. We'll also be joined by other guests during the course of the program. Umar, we were talking, there's, of course, politically speaking, again, we are looking at a lot that is being said in terms of the level playing field, which was again an argument that the PTI was making before the nomination papers the process of nomination papers actually started. And then we saw the scrutiny happen and everything happen, and then a record number of these nomination papers being accepted. Now again, after this decision, there is a lot of talk about the level playing field. I will come to the legal side of things also, but how do you look at that in the kind of political scenario that there is at this time, now, this close to the elections?
So I think the doctrine of level playing field is something that is being propounded by its proponents at the moment as the guiding principle behind whatever is being done by the Election Commission, by the caretaker government, and even by the Supreme Court. And while I don't endorse that doctrine, and I don't, in fact, I think that is a doctrine which the political architects of that doctrine have to defend. I have nothing to do with it. But the doctrine seems to be that the PTI should be subjected to every foul play and every injustice that the other political parties in the history of this country have suffered. So if Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was hanged, the leader of the PTI should also, be penalized. He should be put to criminal prosecution if the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was disqualified.
But
the chairman PTI should also be disqualified.
But if you look at
the election symbol was taken.
But Umar, if you look at it legally speaking, what you are saying in terms of the let's talk about the disqualification for a second. Isn't the disqualification of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan Sahab based on its own set of facts? It's based on its own set of realities. It's based on its own, and to compare it to the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif Sahab again is perhaps it's not as simplistic as it's presented, and as is this case also. When we look at the facts of this case, when we look at what actually happened in court, it seems to be about the intra-party elections of the party, the misses there, the anomalies there, and when the court explored the issues there on the facts, they felt that they couldn't allow the symbol to be retained by the political party.
Right. So I think if you look at it, it really depends on how you look at it. But the doctrine of level playing field is something I think that does need to be talked about and needs to be discussed, because for some people it means that all political parties in the present election should have an equal chance to participate, and I think that is perhaps what you might have understood from that term. But I believe that the architects of that doctrine actually don't understand it that way. They understand it that the PTI in 2024 should suffer every obstacle, should have to cross every obstacle that I won't say suffer, should have to cross every political obstacle that the PMLN had to cross in 2018 and the PTI argument. And the People's Party had to cross in the 1990s.
But that's a political argument that may not have anything to do with the legal realities when the case was presented.
So I've really been thinking for the last few months, and I've taken my time to dwell on the question.
Okay.
But I think from what I see around me, the doctrine of level playing field is the critical doctrine in this elections. And what it means to its architects is not that every political party should have the same right to participate today. What they mean by it is that the PTI should have to go through every obstacle that was created for earlier political parties in the early
Let me
years.
go to Ummar Ziauddin Sabji. Umar, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's a certain way of looking at things, but not necessarily the only way as far as Umar is concerned. You know, when he says that this is what level playing field means. As far as level playing field, every set of facts, I mean, the facts are different when we look at what's happened as far as the PTI is concerned. The facts were different when the former Prime Minister, of course, Nawaz Sharif Saab was, or his party was going through what happened earlier on. There is, you know, unfortunately, there are equalities that are drawn between the two instances, but the facts before the court yesterday, were they not very different when you look at the flaws, factually speaking, that came to notice of the court when making a decision yesterday?
I think it is quite clear that once the court decided to review the electoral process and the conduct of elections and did not exercise restraint, it was going to be slippery slope for PTI, as it would be for other parties. And, you know, on the issue of level playing field, I agree with you. Facts are completely different. For the past 10 years, at least, it was -1, minusing an individual from the political realm. And now we are effectively talking about, because of one political opinion, and an entire party has been disenfranchised.
Why were elections actually, isn't it true that elections were actually not held? You know, people who objected from the party were actually, they had alleged that they weren't members, but actually they were members. There was, you know, the time that was taken, they were not actually held where they had alleged that these elections were held. There was, you know, they didn't adhere to their own rules that they had said that they had made according to the party. So, you know, there is actually, there's a lot of facts.
No, I don't disagree with you. Of course, there were these gaps, as there were with the elections of ANP, who were just fined 20,000 for not holding the elections. PTI did hold the elections, unopposed elections. But the issue is, the scheme of the law says you present the certificate that, you know, we've conducted the elections. And thus far, the courts would not really review the conduct of elections. This time they have. And it's a new precedent, and we wait for the, you know, opinion of the court. It's a short order as of now, which doesn't really give a lot of legal reasoning, and we'll see what was the basis on which it was decided. But once the court did decide that it's going to review the conduct of elections, you know, it's not something that they're not going to look into, then it was going to be trouble for PTI.
And they and what you know, we saw the senior counsel of the PTI say that they were expecting this. It wasn't you know, surprising what happened.
That's just a presser for the media. Let's what to comment on it. I mean, they fought their case, and I think
but there was, as I understand, also an issue of preparedness, you know, as far as the PTI itself was concerned. And there's a lot that is being said about that also. And the fact that, of course, that they were given time, but it was not utilized in
I
the
think they should have argued on Form 35. You see, by nature, our electoral laws are exclusionary. And what you emphasize on symbol is because there's no party name mentioned on Form 35.
Let me come back to you on that. I'm going to go to Usama, Khawar, Ghumman, who's also a legal expert. Usama, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Some of the decision yesterday in the Supreme Court, we're talking about what it means overall, and the fact that, you know, there is a lot being said when we look at the decision politically, but actually, you know, when we on the facts before the court, there was a lot that you know, the party couldn't satisfy the court on. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think strictly legally speaking, from the black letter law.
But, but are we not strictly legally speaking when we talk about a case in the Supreme Court?
No, that is where I would disagree, Marukh.
Okay.
So Supreme Court, and not only this very specific Chief Justice, but also in recent times, and especially considering that it is the ultimate constitutional court and guardian of fundamental rights, the ultimate court. So this is not strictly a black letter law court. This court has jurisdictions that extend beyond. So I understand that this case was strictly a civil petition for leave to appeal. So it was an appellate jurisdiction. But the Supreme Court has also exercises other jurisdictions, and the Supreme Court has also a power to do complete justice under the Constitution. So this was not merely a technical or strictly legalistic question. It was a question, an issue that went to the very root of our democracy.
And Usama, is it fair? I mean, should the courts have ignored the facts before it and actually, in the interest of democracy, held that the party should be allowed to retain its symbol because the democracy so dictates?
So Marukh, there was also another competing consideration that the Supreme Court has, and one was also Article 17 of the Constitution, and the fundamental right, and which some of the defendants argued before it. So if it is a question that a large number of people, what is the effect? The effect is that the party that was in government, not very remote past, has been essentially banned or restrained from participating in an election. And it has a large number of followers, supporters, and also there was something to be said about the discriminatory attitude of the Election Commission and the way in these proceedings one particular party, major party, has been singled out. So I think there were competing considerations in the Supreme Court. The court had ample jurisdiction and powers under the Constitution, and also the very jurisprudence of this court to take other considerations which were also.
But of course, I mean, as far as people who are at this time participating, as far as the candidates are concerned, those candidates are still going to be participating in the elections. Then nobody is asking them to step aside. Nobody is, there's no prejudice against those people. And then we saw what happened yesterday with a new party emerge. What you have to say to that? There was, this whole issue about PTI in Kalabi, so to speak, and Nazriati, PTI-N, and there was, again, this gimmick, or how do you look at that?
So there was Plan B or whatever they call that. They had another shell party, and there are two problems with it. A, why would the main party would be denied from participating in the election, and even that party, due to the hidden forces, their leader has come forward and
But isn't it? I mean, when we look at what happened in court, and I think like I said, the lead counsel saying that they were expecting that because of what when they look at the intra-party elections themselves and they look at the misses, the lacunas within that, and how the deviation from procedure, from the rules themselves that were laid down by the party itself, if that work, we saw Plan B, C, all of that. Instead of that, if they had been had actually done the work on these intra-party elections, then perhaps it would have been easier, or it would have been a different result from what we saw yesterday.
I would partly agree and partly disagree. So, Marukh, in the larger scheme of things, if had not been this, there would have been something else. So
that's a political statement. I think that's a political statement. It's not a legal one. I mean, it's a political statement to say that if it hadn't been this, it would have been that. We saw what happened with the acceptance of the nomination papers also. There was a lot that was said at that time about the level playing field, about why, the acceptance of papers, of allowing the candidature, to go through, the scrutiny to go through, the acceptance. And then we saw that those appeals being accepted in the appellate tribunals.
Yeah, in lots of instances, this particular party, PTI, and their candidates did get relief, but the scale of those individual candidates and is virtually and essentially barring a party from contesting elections, and then it has other consequences that A, the party won't be able to field its candidate, and then they won't be able to get those seats, reserved seats. There are seats for women, there are seats for minorities,
So what happens to those seats?
Sorry, I missed.
The proportional representation that goes to each party.
Yeah, they would not be. They would not. Since there is no party, the party would not be able to get a significant number of women seats and also minority seats in the elections. And most importantly, these people, they would not be subject to a party discipline under Article 63 of the Constitution. We have had a long history since 19.
To which there is, of course, the argument that kind of discipline would have come from these elections having been held, from the intra-party elections being held, which were not held by the due process, wasn't taken. The route that was taken, there were a lot of misses. There were no ballot papers. There was no, everyone was elected unopposed. There seemed to be a sham. There are a lot of these issues that I think will come up in the detailed judgment when it does come on. We'll be taking a short break, after which we'll come back to talk about what it means now for the political parties as a whole. Welcome back. We're talking about the political consequences at this time as far as this decision is concerned. Umar, there's of course, politically speaking, these candidates will now be contesting as independent candidates, and they have different symbols. So now what it will come to largely, not the party vote so much, but more about, how the personality of the candidates and what they have to say to the people. That's what it looks like, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think the PTI's candidates, people who were until yesterday PTI's ticket holders, are now going to be running the elections as independents. Quite obviously, the electorate will find out, and the PTI will try to educate its voters that these are our candidates, so please vote for them. But
how?
All.
Is there a do you think?
I think, and if I can come in, the challenge here is how do you convince your voters in a particular constituency that this is my PTI's official candidate. I know they'll have the lists and everything, but because there's no party discipline, there's no party name on the ballot paper, it's going to be free for all. I think the dissidents who did not get the party tickets
will also be saying they're from PTI.
Because they have a field opened up to them, and they're going to contest the elections, which will inevitably split the vote of PTI. So I don't think that it's going to be an easy task educating the masses, or that sort of reining them in within the party discipline.
And of course, it will depend with regard to the particular constituency and how important the candidate is, and all of that, how the way that they're being looked at, all of those things.
This is not 1988, and this is not even 2018. This is 2024.
You think there's a way to educate people without the symbol?
A lot of PTI's voters will still be able to find out who the candidate is. But I think there is certainly some disability that the PTI will suffer. But the bigger disability is when the elections are done and these independents, let's say some of them are able to win. If they had been running on the PTI's ticket,
they couldn't have joined.
They would have firstly been bound by the party discipline. So after winning the elections, they could not have defected. But right now, these informal PTI candidates who are running on an informal party ticket can, after winning, be either compelled to join either by fear or favor some other parties. Secondly, if they had been running as a party, they would have been allocated a certain share of the reserved seats, which include the seats for women and minorities. And thirdly, they would also have been able to, contest together for a Senate election. So really, I think yesterday's decision has been
Umar, even
a
otherwise, when we
major.
look at, as a student of law, as a and somebody like you both who are looking at the politics, we all are at political landscape. This also points out to a lot of issues with intra-party elections, within the way that our political parties are structured, the way that the issues within the parties themselves.
I think
and the way that the way that of course they were asked to give a certificate to the election commission, and the way that it looks like prima facie, and the way of course we've seen the decision, a hastily held intra-party elections with no real form to them, with no real meat to them, which are like unopposed, and which are the way that it's just used as these parties and the way that they're structured, particularly now that we've seen the PTI's intra-party elections when the court has looked at them, and the way that the certificate has been presented. So it seems that there are a lot of issues like that already within our system at this time.
So on the principle, of course, we want people within our parties to be vying for the top offices. Would this opinion necessarily enable that? Time will tell. We don't have the crystal ball. But of course, imagine somebody challenging for the party head position in Muslim League N. Imagine somebody vying for the top office in People's Party in ANP. Would this opinion be the great enabler for the democracy within the parties, which is quintessential for parliamentary democracy, which I agree in principle with?
Even in 2013.
One has one's apprehensions, but maybe it will.
But even in 2013, when the intra-party elections of PTI were held, as I understand, there was a lot of, with Justice Ziauddin, there was a lot that was said. There was a lot of, again, they were made controversial. So with regard to these issues, I think that they have been there in PTI for a long time. And again, when this argument was made in the court, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Chief Justice said that, the issue before us is with regard to the PTI elections. And if somebody aggrieved from another political party would come, then we would probably look at it and look at their elections in the same way.
You want to respond?
Yes, Umar.
I really don't have anything to say to that.
The issue.
Today I'm at a loss.
But do you agree that the
words.
issue before? But do you agree that the issue before the court was PTIs?
I think the issue before the court was to enforce the fundamental right of the people of Pakistan to vote for parties of their choice. Because as my learned friend,
with whatever facts came to them.
With whatever facts came to the court, as my learned brother Usama Khawar has just pointed out.
If you had anybody, for example, from any other political party come to the Superior Court on allegations like this, would they not have been mandated to look at those?
In my humble view as a student of the law, I think if it was any party in the country other than the PTI. No, but
isn't this about, again, doctrine of necessity?
I think it is not about the doctrine of necessity.
It shouldn't be.
It is about the doctrine of doing substantial justice and the doctrine of fundamental rights. You see, you might recall that a few months ago, His Lordship, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, when he was the senior puisne, he visited a conference held on the floor of the Parliament, and there was a book in his right hand which he waved to this country, and that was not the Elections Act. It was the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, because that is the book on which he has sworn an oath to defend. And that book promises people their fundamental rights. It does not talk about intra-party elections, but it does talk about
But they will be allowed
right
to vote for the people that they want still. I mean, of course, they will not, the symbol is no more there. But
I think there is a judgment of the Supreme Court, 1989 Benazir Bhutto case, and we'll have to see how this court distinguishes itself from the emphasis that that court laid on the party symbol, because it sort of said in conclusion that it is synonymous with the party itself. That's the power of symbol, and we can draw on trademark laws, for instance. We associate the brand because of the symbol as it is. So I think the challenge for the court remains the past precedent, the constitution, and the fact that the court seems to have entered into a political arena, what to write, what not to write.
Okay, I mean, I understand your opinion on this, both of you. But the question is, does it also not show a lack of seriousness on the part of the party itself? The way that, hastily held elections, the way that, I think you would have to agree to that, the way that, the flaws that it has exposed, and the fact that there is a lot of disorganization within the party. Well, we saw if you are comparing it to what happened, you said that there is one way of looking at it in the past with the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif Sahab. The party went ahead with its elections. The party went ahead with its elections in a manner perhaps that one has to agree, differentiates it from what this particular political party is doing today. Regardless, forget the symbol decision, even if we forget it.
Right. I want to address what you've said, but first let me add on to what my learned brother, Barrister Umar, has said. He mentioned the 1988 case, Benazir Bhutto versus the Federation, which is the first instance of the Supreme Court of Pakistan exercising its original jurisdiction. So to say, the first suo motu case in the history of this country. And what was that case about? It was about restoring the symbol that the Pakistan People's Party had, which had been taken away from it by the establishment
So it's
of the
happened to
time.
other political parties
And then the
at
Supreme
different
Court
junctures in time.
intervened in its extraordinary jurisdiction to restore that symbol. But things have gone further. At that point in time, having a symbol did not entitle you to reserved seats. In 1988, there were no reserved seats in Parliament. Today, having a symbol is even more important because it entitles you to certain reserved seats. So it's really hard to see how the Supreme Court will distinguish, but of course we defer to the judgment of the Chief Justice, and we will see how he distinguishes this case from the 1988 judgment.
But he's also said, according to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what the CJ has said is that his decision itself. We have SN Iqbal Sahab with us from the PMLN, and I'll just come back to you. SN Iqbal Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
SN Iqbal Sahab, there's a lot that is being said, when you talk about what happened yesterday with the bat symbol as far as the PTI is concerned. And there is, people are equating it, and some people are saying that it is synonymous to what happened earlier with the PMLN. In terms of the level playing field issue. How would you respond to that?
No, I think that is a wrong comparison. It is like comparing apples with oranges. First of all, it is completely incorrect to say that anyone is to be blamed for PTI for not having bat as their symbol. It is PTI itself to be blamed because since 2021, Election Commission of Pakistan had been pointing out this irregularity, that PTI was in violation of the law and they had not undertaken the intra-party election requirement. They had not met the intra-party election requirement of the law. And repeatedly, Election Commission had been asking them to fulfill this requirement of law. And PTI chose to ignore all those warnings. So again, what Supreme Court decided was a matter of law. Supreme Court is not supposed to be an equalizer. Supreme Court is a body which decides cases on merit, on law. So Election Commission pointed out that all other parties have complied with the requirement of holding intra-party elections, and PTI has been in violation of this requirement. So that is why they are unable to register them or to extend their registration. And I think after that, Supreme Court had no other choice except to, go with the Election Commission of Pakistan decision. So if anyone is to be blamed, it is PTI itself that it did not comply with the law. And we, while were targeted in 2018, but we never compromised on compliance of the legal requirements for us to operate as a political party.
Iqbal Sahab, you're now, when we're this close to the elections, it is also being said that PMLN seems to be the beneficiary of the decision that came out yesterday in terms of the vote bank and overall position as far as political parties are concerned. Do you think that's true?
I think the credit goes to PTI leadership's wisdom that they have given us this benefit. I mean, again, they are to be blamed. I mean, look at it's not this decision. After vote of no confidence, who advised or who decided and on what basis did Mr. Imran Khan decide to resign from the National Assembly and leave the forum clear for the ruling coalition? Who asked Imran Khan to dissolve his own Punjab and KP government, which if he had continued would at least have the benefit of having two PTI governments in two provinces till end of the term of the government? Who advised him to carry out 9 attacks on GHQ, on cantonments, on monuments of our martyrs, burning the house of Mr. Jinnah? Well, these are odd decisions which PTI leadership took, and if They are facing the consequences of these decisions. They should take the responsibility that it is their own follies that have brought them to this disaster.
Are you going to be looking at, as far as the PMLN is concerned, are you going to be looking at, as far as your campaigning is concerned, are you expecting there to be perhaps a faster pace now in terms of momentum, now that, you're very close to the elections?
Yeah, I think because other parties have nominated their candidates and PTI candidates are also in the field. Their nomination papers have been cleared and approved. Now we are in active campaigning process. So I do hope that in the coming days and weeks, you will see the tempo of election campaigning picking up towards 8th of February.
Iqbal sir, there is also a lot being said in terms of how it's going to, as far as this election is concerned, it seems difficult that one particular political party will be able to get that kind of majority, and it seems to be perhaps an election which will yield, maybe two parties or, a political vote bank being divided. How do you look at the elections now that we're very close? Do you think
at the ground situation, I am very hopeful that PMLN will be able to go well beyond simple majority. And I think this is what the country also needs. The country is facing serious economic challenges, and we need a government with very stable mandate so that it can undertake reforms in next 5 years without any fear of blackmailing or coalition pressure. So even if we get majority, our desire would be to associate other parties with our government or to have a broad-based coalition, because if we have to really carry out reforms in the country, a success of reforms would depend what kind of a broad-based support we can have for implementation of those reforms. So do intend to seek a broad-based coalition, even though if we have a simple, clear-cut majority, or for that matter, even if we have two-thirds majority, we would still like others to join us and work in a collaborative.
There is unfortunately a lot of polarization at this time, and we have seen in the past, after the May 9th also, and overall, as far as certain political parties are concerned, there was a build-up to that also. Do you think that as a political party, PMLN will be able to unite political parties towards the agenda, like you are saying, of moving forward together towards a better economic Pakistan, economically a better Pakistan, perhaps, moving towards, like you said, judicial reform, police reforms, all of those things that have remained on the agenda for a long time?
If you look at our past performance during 2013 and 18, we were also in a very polarized environment when PTI was carrying out their sit-ins and dharnas. Yet, Mr. Nawaz Sharif sought to create consensus on all national policies. After the very terrible and tragic incident of Army Public School in Peshawar, he invited all country leadership, including civil and political, to forge a consensus on national action plan. Similarly, for China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, he held 2 meetings with all leaders of Pakistan, including opposition leaders, including Mr. Imran Khan, so that we have consensus on this national project. Similarly, we worked very closely with government of Sindh, where People's Party, which was in opposition, leader of opposition was from People's Party. Yet we worked very closely with the provincial government in Sindh to work on law and order in Karachi and to also develop our coal project, which was Pakistan's hidden treasure for 70 years. We were able to unearth it through CPAC. So we have shown in the past that we are capable of working or running the country in an inclusive manner. And we certainly look forward that if we come back to government, I think now time is right that we should have a much bigger or a grand national dialogue, not just among political actors, but also state institutions, that how can we ensure a consistency of policy, stability of politics for at least a decade, because economic policies do not give results before a decade. Look at our neighboring country. Mr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister for 10 years, Mr. Modi for 10 years, Hasina Wajid Saiba 15 years in Bangladesh, and that continuity has really enabled both India and Bangladesh to move forward with very fast speed, and they have overtaken us because of that political stability. While we have been mired in instability, we have history of a political crisis and not allowing governments to complete their tenures. So I think it is about time we look for next 25 years. In 2047, Pakistan and India will complete their centenary. How are we going to face history? For next 25 years, we not only have to catch up, but we have to grow fast. And the foundation for next 25 years will be laid on 8th February with the next 5-year term. Can we really provide Pakistan the foundation for a fast-track growth in next 25 years? Or we will land Pakistan into another political crisis, turmoil, chaos, inter-institution conflict. I mean, we cannot put more instability now. I think we all have to get very focused. We have to work together.
Also, one last thing, as far as manifesto are concerned, I know that you're a part of that. What can we expect from the PMLN manifesto tomorrow?
Well, PMLN manifesto is addressing Pakistan's major economic challenges. Our major thrust is on fixing or turning around the economy, and certainly the inflation in the country, which has made life terrible for vast majority of people. How can we reduce the prices or tariffs of electricity and gas? How can we reduce food cost for people? How can we bring down poverty and unemployment? And that requires starting the growth engine. But then we also need to focus on developing our export sector very fast, because unless we are able to earn foreign exchange for the import needs of the economy, we will again land into the same problem that we land in after every 5-7 years. So our major primary focus will be making Pakistan an export-led growth economy so that we are not again crashing due to want of foreign exchange. We will focus on human resource, because now fourth industrial revolution has come in, which will make many of the skills and the industries redundant in next 10 years or 20 years. So we need to develop new skills. We need to develop new industries that will make us relevant in the new economy. And we also need to be more competitive. So I think it will be a broad-based agenda. And also our focus will be on agriculture sector, which is backbone of Pakistan. How can we have a green revolution 2.0 where we can use technology in agriculture to increase or boost our productivity?
Fair enough. Thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Ummar Ziauddin, thank you for joining us. Usama, Khawar, Ghumman, thank you for your time. Overall, as far as when we look at the situation at this time, of course, we now have in the political realm, we're very close to the elections. And of course, as far as manifestos are concerned, with the PMLN set to unveil their manifesto tomorrow, we will be seeing a pickup in the overall political activity, with a lot of jalsas happening, a lot of political gatherings happening, with the country, perhaps the momentum of the elections, set to increase. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But of course, February 8th is the day. Thank you so much for joining us today on Prospect.